Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Modular. Today we're looking at the 1222 Performance VCO from Look Mum No Computer. Nice. Well, Look Mum No Computer, as you probably know, is this fella. This luminous, crazy, mad, exciting synth punk genius that is Sam Battle. He's famous for making all sorts of weird synthesizer machines and devices and pulling stuff apart and putting stuff back together, finding and refining out of bits of old crap, old technology, and stuffing it into the museum that is not obsolete. Quite an extraordinary person who is also an artist, a builder of modules, an inventor of sound sources, and a performer of modular synthesizers. And this module, the history of this module is that it came out of his experience of playing modular. And this is his first Eurorack module. Now, Sam has a history with Eurorack. He has been performing live with modular for a very long time, and he found that his personality when it came to performing with Eurorack just was too big. It was too big for the format. Eurorack is small, it's fiddly, it's got small knobs, you need to sort of bring yourself into it, whereas Sam's style of performance is very much exploding out of himself. And so he came up with this idea to take Eurorack technology and explode it into a much larger format. Now, that format is Kosmo, which is this here. The idea is pretty simple really. You just take Eurorack technology and you make it bigger. So you've got room between the knobs. You can use much larger knobs. You can grab them in live performance when you're moving and jumping up and down and pogoing and stuff. It's got proper jack sockets so you can stick big fat things in. And so Sam, through his sort of frustration of using Eurorack in live performance, came up with a whole series of Kosmo format modules. He came up with the designs for a whole range of different modules, and these are available to buy as front panel and PCB. You can't buy the thing as an actual complete module. You have to build it yourself. Why are you back? So it is with no small amount of irony that the Kosmo format modules find themselves reworked into Eurorack size. Why would you do that? Why? Why go against every principle and every fibre of your soul that made you produce an entirely new format and bring it back into the format that everybody else has, that everybody else wants, and that everybody else could use in their existing modular systems? I wonder what could possibly be the reason. Anyway, a friend of Sam's called Christian Block, who runs Funk Modular, suggested that perhaps the world would like to use his fabulously crazy, zany, awesome, edgy modules in their own Eurorack systems. And so we have the Kosmo Eurorack format, which is completely brilliant. Christian tells me that the technology within here, because these are just so brilliantly simple and straightforward, analog designs, great big fat components in loads and loads of space, designed to be fast, straightforward, funky. All of the character and the life of these modules can absolutely be found in the Eurorack version. So Christian has kind of shrunk them down using surface mount technology and other bits and pieces, but as far as he's concerned, it's exactly identical to the Kosmo format, just in the size that everybody else can use. Thank you very much. Because unless you're prepared to build yourself a Kosmo format modular, which is something that, look, I'm trying to do, it's very exciting, then you're not going to get the opportunity to benefit from Sam Battle's interesting, quirky designs. And so here we are. The first one is the 1222 Performance VCO. Following this up will also be the GUR filter, which is the 1114 filter GUR, which is interesting. I've got that as well, and I'll do a separate video on that. But for this video, we're just going to focus on the glorious simplicity of the 1222 Performance VCO. And so I'm going to take this good looking fella, plug it back into the rack, and let's have a closer look. The 1222 Performance VCO then, what a handsome looking module. You gotta love the knobs, I think. I think they're great. I mean, obviously they mirror what we had in the Kosmo format. Just, you know, the size of that thing is just to the point of ridiculousness. But the knobs retained from that are lovely. They're lovely things, without a doubt. They definitely give it a particular vibe. Now, the most obvious, perhaps unique feature of the 2022 is the tuner here. Built in, it's run on an Arduino in the background, running a little bit of software to detect the internal frequencies and allows you to dial in, well, you know, whatever you like, really. You have a whole octave throw on this fine tuning knob here, and then this is octaves. So the reason for the tuner, more than anything else, comes out of Sam's experience of playing live. You know, if you imagine the scenario, you've got your modular stuck in the back of a van in the middle of the night outside a pub, and it's freezing cold, and then you take that modular, you stick it on a hot stage that's full of 100 people bouncing up and down. The changes in temperature that the modular goes through are pretty extreme, and so the chances are that things are going to be thrown out all over the place, and that's kind of what Sam's experience was. And so he's constantly having to retune oscillators. So building in a tuner means that he can start up his rig, he can go straight to it, and he can tweak and adjust and get everything in tune before he plays a note, which is perfect. The other thing that he did is took all of the calibration trimmers and stuck those out the front here, which is another kind of genius idea, because whenever you're calibrating oscillators or changing something or adjusting something on a module, you're always having to take it out of your rig, which is fine in the studio. But again, if you've had something go awry between the sound check and your live performance or on stage or in any other situation, you need to be able to adjust things quickly, and this enables you to do that. Now, with the Eurorack module, all of the calibration stuff has been done for you, so you shouldn't really ever need to touch these. But because this is what occurred on the original Kosmo format module, then those same things are reflected in the Eurorack module because they are the same. And who knows, you may need to adjust these in a live performance situation or some other situation. You don't have to take the module out. It can be in your rack permanently. You can tune it, you can calibrate it all from the front panel. And all of that is pretty unique in Eurorack and is absolutely born and forged out of the hard use of modular in live performance, and that's what makes this an interesting performance orientated VCO. So let's have a look at the waveforms then. Square wave, sawtooth wave, triangle wave. So the square wave is here. Into our scope, with pulse width modulation. Lovely. Then is the sawtooth. Oh, just to note that I'm just running an LFO through a quantizer in order to give that change of notes. You can run just a straightforward LFO into it. Then we've got the triangle. Now what you may have noticed on the scope is something a little bit odd. The size of the waveforms are different. So you've got your triangle, which goes up to just about +5. Sawtooth goes up to a good +7. Square wave goes all the way up sort of to 11. Which I think gives an indication of what it is that Sam favours in terms of what waveform he likes to use. You might also notice that they are unipolar, so we're going from 0 to 11 as opposed to cycling around 0 as you would perhaps normally expect. If I go to, there we go, that's plus or minus 12, and you can see it's running purely at the top. And you may ask yourself, is that a problem? Well, it's actually not that uncommon to have unipolar output of oscillators. In fact, that's actually what comes out of the 3340 chip, which is inside here. The 3340 is the same oscillator chip that you find in the Prophet 5 and the SH101 and lots of classic synthesizers. So the 1222 is absolutely attempting to offer you a synth sound. You know, the sound of synths that we like, the sort of waveforms that we actually use in everyday performance in trying to write synth pop, punk, techno type sounds. And that's something which I find quite interesting. It's not trying to be clever. It's not trying to give you a interesting mix of waveforms. It's not trying to outsmart you in the cleverness of its sound design. It is just giving you the sound that you're actually going to use day in and day out. Straightforward, no nonsense, lovely jubbly, as Sam would say. But the fact that they are unipolar does mean that they mix in perhaps a slightly different way than you'd expect from other oscillators. If I plug all three in, you may find that the sum of them kind of completely ends up destroying itself. But if you bring that pulse width back, then more of the waveform reveals itself. So there are certainly other options available in there once you start blending these waveforms together. But honestly, I think the point of this oscillator is that you choose your waveform and you go with that. There is, of course, pulse width modulation with a CV input, which is here, and an attenuator on that. So you can plug any old LFO into that to give you some of that good stuff that we like. We also have sync and FM input, so let's bring in another oscillator. Obviously it's very easy to tune the 1222 because it has this lovely inbuilt tuner. With everything else, I've got to tune it to that by ear. One thing that occurs to me that would have been really nice would be if there was like a side input, just an input that breaks the internal connection to the tuner and allows you to tune another oscillator. You know, just something here that I can plug that in and quickly tune my other oscillator using this tuner, because I have this tuner in my rack now and I can only use it on this single oscillator, and that seems a little bit of a shame. I mean, obviously in the Kosmo format, these are the only oscillators that Sam's using. They're the only ones, there are no others in that format, and so they each have their own tuner, making that very, very simple. But in a Eurorack situation, in this environment, you're going to have other oscillators, and just using that would have been really useful, but otherwise you have to do it by ear, which, you know. So there we are, deliciously detuned. So for a bit of sync, let's take the square wave output of my Honor oscillator over there, stick that into sync, and that should give us a little bit of something more to play with. Let's put the tune into the other oscillator. And just listen to the 1222. So there's every bit of sync action that I can think of. That's pretty juicy. I mean, obviously, if you were using two of the 1222 performance VCOs together, that would give you a little bit more clarity over the tuning. Similarly, if you're going to start doing some FM, which I'll do with the Honor oscillator here, using the tunable nature of the 1222 means that you can set ratios a little bit more properly. So let's try some of that kind of FM nonsense by putting that in there. So plenty of nutty sounds available via the FM input, which leaves us with one final input, which is this second CV input. So again, if we give it a bit of a tune. So if I bring in an LFO to the CV input here, I can give it a little bit of vibrato. It has an attenuator knob, which is slightly annoyingly over here, and I guess it's relevant to the tuning switch. This is what they're suggesting it's doing. But it's a little bit far away from here, and you're always thinking that this has got something to do with sync or FM, and it hasn't. This knob is to do with this input here. So as I turn this up, we will experience its effect. Yet of course you could use it for all sorts of things. You could use it for transposition. You could stick in two different melodies and have those combined through it, or like this, I'm just sticking a square wave in, and so with every cycle it transposes it. It's all terribly out of sync. Or you can randomize it. It's entirely up to you. An oscillator isn't actually that fascinating by itself. It gets more and more interesting as you run it through other stuff. So just to finish this off, I have done another video which pulls together a whole bunch of different sound examples of running this oscillator through different things and in different ways. But just to finish off this review, I'm going to just run it through a couple of different filters just to see what that sounds like, and build up a little bit of a patch, maybe add some delay, some other interesting bits and pieces, just to give you a flavour of what's possible depending on what you run it through. Because ultimately, this is just waveforms. Do also check out my review video of the 1114 filter grrr, which is this module here, which will be coming along soon after I've finished this one. But hey, let's run some waveforms through some filters and see what happens. So the 1222 Performance VCO then. There you go. I mean, it's just an oscillator. It's a 3340 oscillator. I mean, there's not masses you can say about them. It's a sound source that gives you 3 waveforms, and really it's kind of after the oscillator that all the big stuff happens, all the filtering happens, all the wavefolding happens, all the interesting sound sculpting things happen. But what the 1222 does give you is an enormously solid, tunable and trustworthy source of square waves, sawtooth waves, and a bit of a triangle thing going on as well. The inbuilt tuner is a fantastic feature, incredibly useful. It does absolutely what Sam wanted it to, which is it's there just telling you at every moment whether your oscillators are in tune, and gives you the opportunity just to tweak that in and keep it all together in the chaos and the craziness and the zaniness and the unexpected unpredictableness of the live performance. It absolutely does do that. It's brilliant, simple, and why doesn't every oscillator have one? Oh, I mean, I suppose, although I mean, I don't know about you, but I tend to just tune things to each other. I'm not that bothered about being in tune, in being in 440 tune, and something like having a tuner built into an oscillator pulls you into that, almost pushes and forces you into that box of being in tune in that sort of way. I mean, of course that's a positive, but it's not necessarily what everybody wants. And if you're looking at microtuning or detuning, or just kind of want things to hang together as they are, then the distraction of a tuner which isn't in tune is perhaps something that you don't want. But for normal people making normal music within a normal synth punk pop paradigm, then absolutely being in tune is a good thing. I mean, what that will probably push you towards is having a few of these, because you're going to want everything in tune. And the fact that you can't use this to tune other things is well, I guess it's a little bit of a shame. But as I say, I mean, certainly from the Kosmo format, from Sam's point of view, the only oscillators he's going to be using are his own, and they all have tuners, so there's absolutely no problem there. But if you're using a spread of other oscillators, then, you know, it would have been an awesome feature just to have a little input that bypasses the internal and allows you to use that tuner for other things. But otherwise, the fun, the character, the quirkiness, the look of this module is just superb. If you're not interested in the artwork or the vibe that Sam's putting out there, then this is probably not for you. There are loads of other oscillators of similar price and similar features which would perhaps suit you better. But if you are taken in by Sam's adorable personality, then absolutely this is the oscillator for you. And there are many more, hopefully, to come along. So do check out my next video, which will be all about the 1114 filter, or whatever it is, which is a fascinating, absolutely fascinating filter. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.